The night was February 9th, 2004. The air in the White Mountains was a biting 20 degrees, the kind of cold that hurts to breathe. When Butch Atwood, a local bus driver, pulled his large yellow school bus over to help a stranded motorist near a sharp V-curve, he thought he was just doing a neighborly chore. He saw a young woman standing by a damaged black Saturn. She was shivering, her breath visible in the freezing air. When he offered to call for help, her response was quick, almost too quick. She begged him not to call the police. She told him she had already called AAA. Atwood knew that was impossible. There was no signal for miles. He didn't argue. He drove the remaining 100 yards to his house, parked his bus, and went inside to use his landline. From his window, he could see the dark shape of the car on the road, but he couldn't see the girl anymore. He spent less than 5 minutes on the phone with dispatch. At 7:46 p.m., Sergeant Cecil Smith arrived at the scene. He expected to find a shaken driver and a tow truck request. Instead, he found an abandoned wreck. The Saturn was locked. A rag had been stuffed into the tailpipe. A strange, deliberate act that made no sense for a simple accident. Smith began to circle the car with his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, hitting the untouched snowbanks that lined the road. There were no tracks leading into the woods. There were no signs of a struggle on the asphalt. The road was a straight, narrow corridor, yet there was no one in sight for miles. The officer checked the nearby houses. He scanned the tree line. The silence of the forest was absolute. A girl had been standing there 4 minutes ago. Now there was only the smell of spilled wine and the ticking of a cooling engine. Maura Murray hadn't run away. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist the moment the bus driver turned his back. When investigators finally gained access to the locked Saturn, they weren't just looking at a car, they were looking at a snapshot of a life interrupted. The interior smelled of boxed red wine, which had splashed across the upholstery and the ceiling during the impact. But as Sergeant Smith began to catalog the items left behind, the standard accident theory started to fall apart. On the passenger seat lay Maura's nursing textbooks and a set of birth control pills. In the back, her clothing and toiletries were packed as if she were heading away for a long weekend. But there was no suitcase, just everything she owned stuffed into bags. Most confusing were the printed directions to a condominium complex in Burlington, Vermont, and another set for a location in the White Mountains. She was driving toward a destination she hadn't shared with anyone. There were also personal items that felt out of place for someone planning to disappear. Her favorite stuffed animal was in the car. Her jewelry was left sitting in the console. And then there were the printouts, emails to her boyfriend, Billy, which suggested a relationship under immense strain, though the words on the pages gave no hint of a final goodbye. The most baffling discovery was found outside the car, yet linked to its final moments. A rag had been shoved deep into the Saturn's exhaust pipe. Mechanics would later state that this could be a trick to hide smoke from a failing engine, but it would also cause the car to stall. Was it a desperate attempt to keep the car running or a strange signal? As the police processed the scene, they realized Maura had taken her credit cards and her cell phone with her, but she had left her gloves and her keys behind. In the sub-zero temperatures of a New Hampshire winter, walking into the woods without gloves is a death sentence. The car was a goldmine of clues, yet none of them explained why a Dean's List student would abandon her life, her car, and her safety to vanish into a forest that was currently freezing her out. To understand the empty car on Route 112, you have to look at the cracks that started appearing in Maura's life days earlier. At the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Maura was known as a standout athlete and a high-achieving nursing student. But beneath that exterior, something was spiraling. On the Thursday night before she vanished, Maura was working her shift at a campus security desk. At some point during the night, her supervisor found her completely catatonic, staring into space. She was so distressed she could only utter 2 words, "My sister." She was so shaken that she had to be escorted back to her dorm room. No one ever found out exactly what that phone call was about, or if a call even took place. The weekend only grew stranger. On Saturday night, Maura went to a party, then borrowed her father's brand new Toyota Corolla to drive back to her dorm. At 3:30 a.m., she slammed that car into a guardrail on Route 9, causing thousands of dollars in damage. The police didn't breathalyze her and no charges were filed, but the incident seemed to be a breaking point. By Monday morning, the day of her disappearance, Maura began systematically cutting her ties. She sent an email to her professors and work supervisors, claiming there had been a death in her family and that she would be away for a week. It was a lie. There were no deaths in the Murray family. She spent the afternoon withdrawing nearly all the money from her bank account, about $280, and stopped at a liquor store to buy a massive amount of alcohol, including that box of red wine later found spilled in her car. She packed her belongings, not neatly, but with a frantic energy, leaving her dorm room looking like someone who wasn't planning on coming back. She didn't tell her father. She didn't tell her boyfriend. She simply got into her aging Saturn and started driving north toward the mountains, toward the darkness, and toward a destination that only she knew. She wasn't just taking a trip, she was fleeing from a life that had suddenly become too heavy to carry. Before Maura walked out of her dorm room for the last time, she left behind a digital trail that investigators hoped would act as a map to her state of mind. When police seized her computer, they found a history of searches that painted a picture of someone looking for an escape, but perhaps one she hadn't fully planned. In the hours leading up to her departure, Maura had been searching for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. She looked into hotels, specifically searching for the phrase Burlington, Vermont hotels. But then, for reasons unknown, she shifted her focus. She began looking at a condominium complex in Bartlett, New Hampshire, a place her family had visited when she was a child. It seemed she was searching for comfort, for something familiar, yet she never made a reservation. Among the technical searches, investigators found something far more chilling. Maura had been looking up the effects of alcohol on a fetus. This discovery sent the investigation into a tailspin of rumors. Was Maura pregnant? Was she running away because of a life-altering secret? While her family and friends adamantly denied this possibility, the search history remained an immovable fact, adding a layer of desperation to her flight. The last piece of evidence from her digital life came from her cell phone records. On the afternoon of her disappearance, she called a number to check her voicemail. She also made a call to a person who owned a rental condo in New Hampshire, but the call lasted only a few minutes and no booking was made. At 3:40 p.m., a security camera at a local ATM captured the final images of Maura Murray alive. In the grainy footage, she is alone. She isn't being followed. She isn't looking over her shoulder in fear. She looks like any other student, withdrawing $280, nearly every cent she had. She then headed to a liquor store where cameras caught her buying a heavy supply of spirits. She had the money, the directions, and the alcohol. She had everything she needed for a getaway, but the digital trail ends exactly where the skid marks on Route 112 begin. Her phone, which she took with her, never pinged a tower again after the crash. In the digital age, Maura Murray did the impossible. She went completely offline in a world that never sleeps. If Maura didn't walk into the woods to freeze, and she didn't disappear into thin air, she had to have left Route 112 in a vehicle. But in a town where everyone knows everyone, a car stopping to pick up a hitchhiker should have been noticed. And it was. But the details only added to the nightmare. A witness who lived nearby later came forward with a chilling detail. While walking home shortly before the police arrived, she claimed to have seen a red pickup truck with a wooden pass through the back window driving slowly near the crash site. According to her, the truck stopped, then started again, as if the driver were looking for something or someone. When the driver saw the witness, he sped off. To this day, that red truck has never been identified. Then, there is the A-frame house. Located within walking distance of the crash, rumors have swirled for years about a local man who lived there. Some believe Maura was lured inside, or that she sought help from the wrong person. Years later, a subsequent owner of the house found a rusted knife and a piece of carpet with suspicious stains under the floorboards. While the police tested these items and claimed they were inconclusive, the locals still whisper about the man who lived there. A man who allegedly joked about Maura being part of the foundation. The most professional theory, however, is the opportunistic predator. In this scenario, Maura is standing by her car, terrified of a DUI arrest and desperate to leave. A car pulls up. The driver looks helpful, maybe even friendly. Maura, thinking she's found a lifeline, hops in. In that 10-minute window, she could have been miles away before the first siren even echoed through the valley. There is also the possibility of a staged disappearance. Some believe Maura had a tandem driver, someone she was following to the mountains who picked her up after the crash and whisked her away to a new life in Canada. But if that's true, she left behind a family that has spent 20 years and a fortune looking for her. She left behind a trail of pain that suggests if she did choose to leave, she did it with a coldness that didn't match the girl her friends knew. The woods were searched with dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers. They found nothing. No clothing, no scent, no remains. This leads back to the same terrifying conclusion. Maura Murray didn't get lost in the forest. She was taken from the road. 20 years have passed since the Saturn crashed into the snowbank at the weathered barn, but on Route 112, time seems to have frozen in place. The V-curve is still there, the forest is still just as thick, and the silence is still just as heavy. Maura Murray would be in her 40s now, but in the minds of the world, she remains the 21-year-old girl in the grainy ATM footage, caught in a permanent state of leaving. The search for Maura became one of the first internet mysteries, spawning thousands of hours of podcasts, documentaries, and amateur sleuthing. Every few years, a new lead emerges. A bone fragment found in the woods, a deathbed confession, or a strange shadow in an old photo. But each time the mountains refuse to give up their secret. The bone fragments turn out to be animal. The confessions turn out to be lies. For her father, Fred Murray, the case isn't a hobby or a mystery to be solved online. It's a life sentence. He has spent nearly every weekend of the last 2 decades driving to New Hampshire, walking the same stretch of road and knocking on doors. He still believes his daughter was abducted by a local, someone who knew the back roads and the blind spots of the law. His grief is a reminder that behind every true crime story is a family waiting for a phone call that never comes. Today, Maura Murray is officially a missing person, but her case is treated with the weight of a homicide. The FBI and the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit still receive tips, but the trail is as cold as the night she vanished. There is no closure, no grave to visit, and no final answer to the question of those missing 10 minutes. As we sign off from this dispatch, we are left with the image of a girl standing in the snow, caught between a life she was fleeing and a fate she couldn't outrun. Did she run into the trees and succumb to the cold? Or did she step into a stranger's car and into a nightmare? In the White Mountains, some secrets are buried under so much ice that even the spring thaw can't bring them to light. As we close the file on Maura Murray, one truth remains. 10 minutes on a dark road changed everything. A locked car, no footprints, no goodbye. Whether she ran into the freezing woods or stepped into the wrong vehicle, the silence that followed has lasted more than 20 years. And somewhere between that snowbank and the tree line, the truth is still waiting. If you found this investigation compelling, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next case. We return every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another story that refuses to stay buried. Until then, stay aware, stay curious, and keep your line open. Good night.